What's up, guys? It's Patricia from tarantulaheaven.com, and today we're going to talk about something I get loads of questions about. It is how to convince an arachnophobic roommate, family member, boyfriend, girlfriend, whoever, to let you get a tarantula even if they're really scared. So I get questions about this on my Tumblr blog a lot because, people see how Spidey is, and I have another tarantula blog that I post other tarantula stuff on. And so people see how wonderful these creatures really are, and a lot of people actually do use that as a segue to kind of getting their first tarantula. And a lot of them come up with the obstacles of having somebody in their life that they live with that is just not cool with the idea at all, and because of arachnophobia. And it can cause a loved one or someone that you're living with a lot of anxiety. So in this video, we are going to talk all about how to address that and some things you can kind of do to let a tarantula come into your life. So enjoy. So a lot of times people will ask, why should you even worry about whether your family member or roommate is arachnophobic? Why don't you just get a spider anyway? And the reason I wouldn't suggest going this route, even though it might be tempting and you think that you can just hide the spider in your room, is that you probably can't. I mean, they will eventually find out, and it's not really good to bring any living animal into a hostile environment, and it can also stress your relationships. So if I were you, I would definitely go the route of trying to reach a compromise and having good discussions around this instead of just springing it on a roommate or a family member. And it's also, you want to be considerate and respectful. You don't want to give the tarantula hobby a bad reputation, or, because tarantula owners are really respectful people. And you do want the people in your life to feel valued and that you do respect their fears and their concerns. So it's always good to have discussions about this and to keep an open dialogue. So with that being said, I'm going to give you a few tips. So when you are dealing with someone who suffers from arachnophobia, it is important to realize that to some extent you are limited in your power to change their mind or make an impression on them if you want a tarantula. It really depends on the severity and willingness of the person to confront their fears. And a lot of people who are arachnophobic, you can just search on YouTube and you'll find tons of videos of people who have actually eased their fears of spiders by holding a tarantula. Just a quick YouTube search will show you that. And you can kind of say that, this can be a way. A lot of times tarantulas can actually be less intimidating because they're big and hairy, and it doesn't quite register in the person's mind that it's a spider, and they tend to move a little bit slower if you have like a calmer species. So you could make the argument that it can actually help. And a lot of times, being up close and personal to a spider and getting to know them in an environment where they're in an enclosure and can't hurt them can actually be really good as far as slowly easing those fears. So that's one way you could go about it. Another thing I should mention is that exposure actually does really work. And sometimes if someone is not ready to handle a tarantula being in the same room as them, exposure from a distance is so helpful. I can't tell you how many times I've gotten messages from people who have just stumbled upon my Tumblr blog by accident, and they get to know Spidey through the pictures, or they see other people's tarantulas doing really funny stuff, and just seeing a different perspective really helps them. And I get messages from people who were once really arachnophobic, and then they are messaging me asking me for advice about getting a tarantula, and they're so thankful because arachnophobia is really a debilitating disorder or phobia, because spiders are everywhere. They're in your house, they're outside, you can't really avoid them, and you're going to come across them throughout your life. So it can be such a relief to kind of address this fear. So what you could do is you could kind of share really interesting, fun facts about tarantulas and spiders. You can expose them or show them pictures from like my blog or others like it. A lot of people are actually really enchanted by the fact that tarantulas do like things like spider yoga, or they play with the objects in their tank, or their other weird behaviors. Because when you get down to it, tarantulas are really interesting, fun creatures, and they're not like these evil, predatory creatures like people have been conditioned to believe. And that's what's at the heart of arachnophobia. So if you can counter that with like really fun, cool like facts, pictures, art, it can definitely start to work on those limiting beliefs that people have about arachnophobia and spiders, and that can be a really big relief for someone who's suffering. And that's really, really powerful as far as changing their perspective on having a tarantula in the house. Now, if you are living with your parents or a caretaker and they have concerns about a tarantula that aren't fear-based, they're more practicality-based, then what you can do is you can, honestly, tarantulas are the most low-maintenance pet that you can get. Um, they they basically, their food costs almost nothing. You can probably feed your tarantula on a few cents to $1 per month, depending on how often your tarantula needs to eat, whether it's a baby or a grown tarantula. Um, Once you get the basic setup and stuff in the tanks, as long as you are not buying a super expensive tarantula that needs a lot of like temperature stuff or humidity things, you're not going to need a lot. So once you get that initial setup done, you basically are not spending anything for like the rest of the year besides its food and like a few cleaning things. You can get away with cleaning a tarantula's tank every 3 to 6 months as long as you're being careful with spot cleaning and making sure that you're not getting mites or anything like that. And they really don't need anything. You can leave them alone for a long time with just water and they will be cool in most cases. So as far as if your parents or somebody is concerned that you're not going to be able to take care of this animal or that it's going to cost them a lot of money, that's absolutely not true. And tarantulas are one of the most least expensive, low maintenance pets that you can get. And unless you're going after an exotic species that needs like a lot of maintenance, which most of them really don't, but there are ones that are more low maintenance than others, you're really looking at a pet that is super hardy and you don't really need to do a lot to. And this next tip is one that I think might be the most convincing or powerful, and I personally really like it the most because I think it's really cute. So in arachnophobia, a big hairy spider that's full grown can be super intimidating for someone who is scared of spiders to begin with. So what you could do as a compromise is you could get a sling or a baby tarantula. And these guys are so tiny. They're a little bit harder to raise, a little bit more maintenance because they need to eat a little bit more, and they might need to switch tanks throughout their life. But they're so tiny, they can like fit on your finger, or they're even smaller if you get them like really early. And now that may not be recommended for a beginner, but if you're willing to have sort of a learning curve and invest a lot of time into learning, that can be great, especially if you're living with someone who's arachnophobic, because having a big hairy spider for your first like interaction with a tarantula can be super intimidating. You're worried about them biting you or attacking you or getting out of the tank. And if you get a baby spider who's like so tiny, you remove the fear of them of your roommate or your family member worrying about being hurt or bitten. It's not so much of a threat to them. So I think that, starting small can be really great. And I think that there's also a greater probability that they'll fall in love with how cute it is because baby spiders are so cute. And so I think that's a really effective way and something that you might want to explore. And also, like, you'll learn a lot raising a tarantula from a sling. So I would highly recommend that way. The last thing to note is that, arachnophobia is a real phobia, and it's important to recognize and respect it. And if you are living with somebody or close to somebody who has severe arachnophobia, you need to respect it. So the best thing that you can do besides, using all these tactics is to just legitimately have a really respectful conversation with them. Do not get overly emotional or, too pushy. You want to really make them understand that you respect their fears and their space and that you're willing to kind of set some boundaries or make some compromises. And, maybe you let them set the rules. Like maybe they don't want the tarantula in a part of the house where they're going to always be. Maybe if you have a roommate, they do not want it in the bedroom. Maybe you can put the tank somewhere else. So yeah, it's really important to just have these discussions and like let them know that you really respect their fears and that you really want to work with them and to, find a common ground where both of you can be happy. So just keep those conversations open and respectful, and try not to let your emotions lead with that conversation, because then they might feel like you don't care about what they're feeling, because what they're feeling is really valid and you need to respect it. And more than likely, if they feel that you are not being super pushy and that you really want to make sure that they're going to be okay too, they might actually think about it. And that's great, because that's all you can really ask for. All right, guys, I know I said that the last tip was going to be the last thing, but I want to end this video with kind of a grim warning, but I need to say it. This is a serious topic. If you are lucky enough to have someone who was arachnophobic in your life and they ended up being okay with you getting a tarantula, I want to stress this. Do not ever play with them about your tarantula. Do not put your tarantula around them when it's out of its tank. Do not put your tarantula's tank near them if they do not want to be near it. And do not play with their molts by putting their molts on like their pillows or anywhere in the house. And also, do not joke that your tarantula got out of its tank and it's now roaming around the house or in their room or something. That's just really cruel. And if this person has done the inner work to help them become okay with you having a tarantula, you really need to respect them. Doing those kind of jokes or pranks or teasing them is just so cruel. I think it's abusive, and I don't think it's safe for them or your tarantula. If you are walking around with your tarantula in your hand and you're putting it around them, that could set them up not only to experience fear or anxiety, but it puts your tarantula in an extremely dangerous position. So if you are going to be careless or mean like that, I don't think you should even get a tarantula. I don't think you should maybe have any pets. This is all about respecting and people, your pet, and creating a really safe space for you all to coexist peacefully. So I just wanted to say that. I know it's super grim, but this is how accidents happen, and we want to promote that tarantulas are great pets. We don't want to keep perpetuating the idea that people need to be scared of these creatures. And if you're going to act like that, we're never going to be able to eradicate that reputation that they have, because people do irresponsible things like that. So we want to make sure that the tarantula hobby kind of gets portrayed as people who are really responsible pet owners, because that's what the majority of us are. So I do not recommend that you make jokes about your tarantula and try to, tease your friends that are scared of spiders. It's just not nice. So that's what I wanted to say about that, and I hope that makes sense. It doesn't come off too mean, but you have to think about your pet, and you have to think about the people in your life. All right, guys, I hope that you found those tips helpful, and I hope that if you are thinking about getting a tarantula and you really want one, but maybe you have someone who suffers from arachnophobia in your life and they're just feeling a little scared, I hope that kind of helps the conversations that you're going to have with them and kind of gives you a greater perspective of what you could do to kind of help them become more comfortable. I wish you luck, and I'm very excited if you do get a tarantula, because we love new tarantula owners, and it's just such a fun journey. So good luck to you all. You can also visit the accompanying blog article on my website. I will link to it below. If you're interested in learning more about tarantulas, especially if you're a new tarantula owner, I do have a tarantula guide out that I will link to in the description. And if you like this video, please subscribe, leave me comments of what else you want to see, or if you have any other tips for people who are suffering from arachnophobia. We love spreading information around here, so I would greatly appreciate that. And if you would like free tarantula tips every week, I do a thing called Tarantula Tuesday. I have a newsletter that you can sign up for, and I will leave the link to that below as well. So anyway, have a great day. Happy Tarantula Tuesday, and I hope that you found this really useful, and I'll see you next time.